I began my life as a reader by escaping. I read to be anywhere but here. Here being a suburb of Sacramento, California. Its tidy planned streets, all named after Civil War battlefields. Each house a palm tree, sprinklers set to water conservation levels. When my parents drove off to work, I climbed atop our baking shingle roof and squinted through the pages of Charlotte Bronte, George Orwell, and Alice Walker. The further a book took me from the Central Valley, the better. Neville Shute's On the Beach clobbered me simply because Australia was so far away it might as well have been Narnia. In reading this way, I wasn't rebellious. I was actually mimicking the trajectory of all my English classes. For a public school student, I was very lucky. My classes were small. They used a curriculum of such rigor and classical design that I might as well have been at Eton. We began my first year with Gilgamesh and ended with the Cavalier Poets. Second year, we read Plato to understand the design of Gustave Flaubert and Jane Austen. In my third year of high school, I wrote a 25-page paper on the influence of Hinduism on Ralph Waldo Emerson's theology. By senior year, we'd read all of Shakespeare's plays but one. What we didn't read were Californians. Sure, John Steinbeck snuck in. We took half a semester to read The Grapes of Wrath, and then another week to watch the maudlin movie made of it. But in a state that had projected its studio lot image across the globe, the literary absence felt peculiar. This was California in the late 1980s and early 1990s. A state stolen from indigenous people, bought from the Mexicans after a war, built by immigrants, and narrated by all kinds, had long since developed a serious literature of people from all backgrounds. It was in its third 20th century flowering, actually. The voices of the pre-statehood settlers like Bret Harte and Samuel Clemens gave way in the 1900s to three waves of overflowing talent. First, in the early 1930s, when novelists such as Frank Norris overlapped with the earliest Asian American writers, chronicling their experiences in a state being carved from industry. Then, in the late 1940s to 1950s, a period bookended by two astonishing novels. Carlos Busan's America is in the Heart, which follows his path from the Philippines to the Canaries of Seattle and California, and Jose Antonio Villarreal's Poncho, which kicked off an already burgeoning movement in Chicano letters. Then again in the 1970s, when radical artistic movements met social change and produced a statewide explosion across genres, from poetry to plays, among which the beats were merely a part. And here I was growing up in the middle of another boom period, yet we didn't read any of the leading lights, such as Maxine Hong Kingston, a groundbreaker with her memoir-turned-family myth, The Woman Warrior.